Hey everyone, it's JR, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're tackling a topic that's both intriguing and often romanticized: off-grid living. Yeah, the idea of ditching the daily grind, being self-sufficient, and living in harmony with nature, it's definitely got a certain appeal. Yes, but as with many things in life, the reality of off-grid living can be a lot more complicated and honestly a lot less glamorous than how it's often portrayed. We've all seen those intriguing Instagram feeds with beautiful, tiny houses nestled in idyllic landscapes, but they often leave out the nitty-gritty, you know? So in this video, we're going to debunk some of the biggest lies about off-grid living. We'll explore the real challenges, the unexpected costs, and the hard truths that nobody really talks about. Don't worry, I'm not here to crush your dreams, but I do believe in facing reality with open eyes. Because truly understanding what it takes to live off-grid is crucial before you even think about taking the leap. So buckle up, grab your thinking caps, and let's dive into the sometimes harsh, always fascinating realities of life beyond the grid. Okay, let's address the elephant in the room, or maybe I should say the solar panel on the roof. One of the biggest misconceptions about off-grid living is that it's going to save you a ton of money. Sure, you won't be paying those pesky utility bills every month, and that's definitely a win. But what many people don't realize is the upfront investment required to get your off-grid homestead up and running. Think about it. You're essentially building your own independent infrastructure. That means solar panels, wind turbines, batteries for storage, a well or rainwater harvesting system, and potentially even a septic system. These systems are not cheap, and the cost can add up faster than you can say renewable energy. And it's not just the big ticket items. You'll need specialized tools, building materials that can withstand the elements. And let's not forget about the ongoing maintenance costs, because just like any other system, things break down, parts need replacing, and all of that requires, you guessed it, more money. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible to live off-grid affordably, but it requires meticulous planning, budgeting, and often making some serious compromises. Because the reality is that idyllic off-grid life can often come with a hefty price tag. Now, even if you've budgeted for the initial setup, off-grid living is full of surprises. And I'm not talking about the good kind. Remember that well we talked about? Sometimes they run dry and drilling a new one can cost a small fortune. Or those solar panels so efficient until a hailstorm hits. And then there are the things you don't even think about until you're faced with them. Like, what happens when your DIY plumbing project goes wrong and you need a professional? Finding someone willing to trek out to your remote location doesn't come cheap. It highlights the importance of having a substantial emergency fund for unexpected costs. Because off-grid living, as romantic as it may seem, doesn't make you immune to life's curveballs. Okay, let's talk about another big off-grid fantasy: complete self-sufficiency. You know, growing all your own food, living off the land, being at one with nature. And while I fully support the idea of growing your own vegetables and maybe even raising some of your own chickens, the reality of producing all your own food is far more challenging than it sounds. First, there's the issue of land. To grow enough food to sustain yourself year-round, you need a significant amount of fertile land, and depending on your location and climate, that can be a scarce and expensive resource. Plus, even with the greenest of thumbs, factors like unpredictable weather, pests, and plant diseases can wreak havoc on your crops, leaving you with a lot less food than you planned on. And then there's the time commitment. Gardening is incredibly rewarding, but it's also incredibly time-consuming. Weeding, watering, harvesting, preserving. It's practically a full-time job, especially if you're aiming for true self-sufficiency. Plus, let's not forget about the learning curve. Unless you're already an experienced gardener, there's a lot of trial and error involved. And making those early mistakes can mean the difference between a bountiful harvest and an empty pantry. So while growing some of your own food is definitely achievable and can be rewarding, relying solely on your garden for sustenance, well, that's a whole other ball game. Now let's talk about energy, because being off-grid usually means generating your own power. Solar panels, wind turbines, hydroelectricity, all fantastic renewable energy sources, but they also come with their own set of limitations and dependencies. See, the sun doesn't always shine, the wind doesn't always blow, and even the most reliable water source can experience droughts or freezes. This means that unless you're living in an area with perfect weather conditions year-round, you'll probably need to supplement your renewable energy system with a backup generator. And yes, that means relying on fossil fuels, at least to some extent. Plus, even the most efficient off-grid energy systems require regular maintenance and occasional repairs, which can be tricky if you're not equipped to handle them yourself. Okay, so you've got your solar panels meticulously angled to catch those sweet, sweet photons. Your rainwater collection system is pristine, and you've planted enough kale to satisfy even the most dedicated hipster. You're living the dream, right? Well, not so fast. Off-grid living is anything but simple. It's about constant problem solving and hard work. Imagine waking up at the crack of dawn, not because you're chasing some idyllic sunrise, but because you need to milk the goats and tend the chickens and water the garden before the sun climbs too high. And oh yeah, did I mention that the pump for your well decided to take an unscheduled vacation this morning? Suddenly that simple life doesn't seem so simple anymore, does it? And that's just the tip of the iceberg. We haven't even touched on the joys of composting toilets, battling infestations without pesticides, or the ever-present threat of power outages when the weather turns sour. You know, look, I'm not trying to rain on anyone's off-grid parade. There's a lot to love about self-sufficiency and living in harmony with nature. But let's not sugarcoat it. Off-grid living is a demanding lifestyle that requires a unique blend of grit, resourcefulness, and a healthy dose of duct tape. I once read this blog post from a woman who, after years of dreaming, finally made the leap to off-grid living with her family. They sold their possessions, bought a plot of land in the middle of nowhere, and set about building their own little walled-in pond. She wrote about the initial euphoria, the sense of freedom and connection to nature, but then slowly the tone of her posts began to shift. She wrote about the endless repairs, the constant battle against the elements, the sheer exhaustion that came from trying to do it all themselves. There were stories of equipment failures, unexpected expenses, and the crushing realization that they hadn't quite grasped the true scope of the undertaking. What struck me most about her story was the sense of isolation. See, living off-grid often means being far away from readily available help. So when the inevitable problems arise, you're often left to your own devices, relying on your own ingenuity and whatever limited resources you have on hand. And that's the thing about off-grid living that those romanticized Instagram feeds often fail to capture: the mental and emotional toll it can take. It's not just about learning new skills. It's about constantly adapting, problem solving, and pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone. And sometimes that can be a recipe for burnout, even for the most dedicated DIY enthusiast. So you've built your own little off-grid paradise. You're living the dream, right? Not so fast. Turns out, even when you're trying to escape the system has a way of catching up. Who knew building codes could be so persistent? You see, even if your off-grid cabin is a masterpiece of self-sufficiency. It might not meet the building codes and regulations of your local government. And trust me, those regulations exist for a reason. Those rules are there to ensure safety and, yes, even in the wilderness, and at a certain level of structural integrity. Imagine pouring your heart, soul, and probably a few too many nails into your dream home, only to have it slapped with a stop work order. Or worse, imagine having to tear down your hand-built haven because it doesn't comply with some obscure zoning law. It's like, I get it, you wanted to escape the rules, but sometimes those rules are there to protect you, even from yourself. And it turns out even the famous Thoreau had to pay his taxes eventually. This reminds me of a story I read about a couple who decided to ditch the rat race and build their own off-grid homestead. They found what they thought was the perfect plot of land, secluded, picturesque, and blissfully free of any pesky neighbors. They poured their savings into building a beautiful self-sustaining home, complete with solar panels, a rainwater collection system, and even a composting toilet. They were living the dream, or so they thought. Then came the day the local authorities showed up. Turns out their slice of off-grid paradise wasn't as off-grid as they believed. They had unknowingly built their home on protected wetlands, a big no-no in the eyes of the law. Despite their best intentions and their commitment to living in harmony with nature, they were facing hefty fines, legal battles, and the potential demolition of their dream home. It's a harsh reminder that even in the pursuit of self-sufficiency, we're all still subject to the rules of the society we're trying to leave behind. So you're off the grid, living in your self-sustaining eco-haven. You're practically one with nature, right? Well, hold on a minute. The truth is, even the most well-intentioned off-grid living can have a footprint on the environment. We tend to romanticize off-grid living as this low-impact, eco-friendly ideal. And while it can be more sustainable in some ways, it's not a free pass to ignore our environmental responsibilities. In fact, some aspects of off-grid living can actually be quite resource intensive. Think about it: clearing land for your home, sourcing materials for construction, even generating your own power. All of these actions have an impact. And let's not forget about waste disposal. We all have that. When you're not connected to the municipal systems, dealing with waste responsibly becomes even more crucial. It's like that old saying, there's no such thing as a free lunch. Even off-grid, we're still consuming resources and generating waste. The key is to be mindful of our impact and strive to minimize it wherever possible. Take solar panels, for instance. They're like the poster child for renewable energy, and for good reason. But even solar panels have an environmental footprint. Manufacturing solar panels requires a significant amount of energy and resources. And while solar energy itself is clean and renewable, the panels themselves don't last forever. Eventually, they need to be replaced and disposed of, which can create electronic waste if not done properly. I remember reading about a study that found that the production of certain types of solar panels could actually release harmful greenhouse gases. It's a reminder that even when we're trying to do the right thing for the environment, there can be unintended consequences. It's not about striving for some impossible standard of zero impact, but rather about being aware of the trade-offs and making informed choices. Off-grid living can be a great way to reduce our environmental impact, but it's not a magical solution to the environmental challenges we face. So, there you have it. The 5 biggest lies about off-grid living. Now, before you start building that bunker in your backyard, let me be clear. I'm not saying off-grid living is a bad idea. In fact, I think it can be a really cool and rewarding way to live, but It's important to go into it with your eyes wide open, aware of both the challenges and the rewards. Like most things in life, it's not as simple or as glamorous as it sometimes seems. Thanks for watching. If you found this video eye-opening, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more content like this. And let me know in the comments if you have any off-grid living experiences or if there's a topic you'd like me to cover next. Stay safe and check out these 2 videos on the screen now. They were selected just for you.